So yeah, it's pretty fascinating. Now, again, some will disagree with this, and these industries will especially disagree with this. Some people say that it's as high with oil to 120 years, with coal to 180 years. I've seen natural gas estimates above 80 years. But these are fairly moderate objective takes, and it's worth considering that there is only so much oil on this planet. There is only so much natural gas. There is only so much coal. Whether or not we know the exact year when we're going to be done with it, these are limited resources, and a shift is needed to new resources at some point in our near future. That'll be interesting to see what we do. Aaron, go ahead.
Okay, so what I find really interesting is when I was looking up surveys by actual industries, so I was reading like a BP review, so an oil company, and they had estimates that had even less than what they're talking about here. They talked like 110 years of coal and like 50 years of oil, a little slightly more natural gas, but their estimates were even less, so I think that's fascinating. I wonder like if the numbers are just newer or maybe that it just depends on the methodology.
Yeah, and it depends. And I've yet to find any study that exactly agrees with all, many others. There's no perfect consensus. But if you take a rough average, these are pretty dang close. It's kind of in that range. It is fascinating to see, Aaron, huh? I'm really saddened to see in the United States that somehow the idea of stewardship of our planet became a liberal versus conservative debate. Now, I can understand how or what involvement government should be a debate. I want to have that debate. I don't know that we need to have this debate here today, but I'm just saying that is an important debate to have, But it's weird at how so many people are, either like one way or the other according to their politics, when it seems something that should supersede that. Am I wrong? What do you think, guys? Am I wrong on this? And do I not have a good sense of it? Is it really, just about governance? I think it's so much more than that. I think it's about who we are, what we do, how we decide to shape our government, less about, liberals versus conservatives. But what are your thoughts? Aaron, go ahead.
I think it just comes down to how you want to be a steward of the earth. And a lot of people have rejected the idea that people can voluntarily protect the earth. And I think, okay, if we want to protect the earth, we just got to have the government do it for us. I think that's the difference and the problem. It shouldn't be a liberal versus conservative, but it's shifted that way because people don't want to take individual responsibility for protecting the environment. They want someone else to make everyone do it so it's all good at once. It's like an immediate gratification thing, I think, in a bit.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons why it happened to Aaron, I think, Aaron, you'll find this particularly interesting, is because of Al Gore. I think the left started using, the environment as like something to beat over the heads the right with. Instead of like saying, where can we agree? It became, look at these crazies, they're out in the night, they don't know what they're thinking about. And then the right, I blame the right for saying, yeah, we'll play that part. You know what I mean? We'll play that part, and we'll reject anything an environmentalist ever says. Now, again, I disagree with some conclusions about how to solve the problem that some environmentalist comes up with. That doesn't mean that I don't want to care for my planet. I find that fascinating that it did become a political argument, and I really blame both the left and the right. This is not something. It's too bad that it became that way, I think, in many ways. Kaylee, what do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say something along very similar lines. What the left typically tends to do, like some politicians, we call it like practice, is my dad was telling me about this, that some democratic theory is that in order to help or in order to make people do something that like kind of an end to mean is to kind of create a problem to be talked about or to be discussed or to get angry or to get agitated about, and they usually kind of use that to antagonize people so that way they can actually do something. As this was done, I think, especially with the economy, and like you were saying, for some reason we think that only people who care about the environment are part of the left and people who don't care about it are part of the right, because we've allowed that to kind of happen. We've allowed it to become this kind of argument like, oh, it's our problem, well, it is a problem, it isn't our problem. And for some reason, we think that if we accept it as a problem, if we accept it as a problem, we have to agree with whoever is saying it's a problem and their solutions. We don't think we can make up our own solutions. And so I think that's definitely a huge part of the problem.
Yeah, fascinating. Thanks for your comment there. DJ, what do you think?
Okay, so I think that this problem basically stems, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, like, it seems like a political thing that everybody on the right is like, no, people above the environment. And then everybody on the left is like, no, the environment above the people. And I think that stems from the human desire to simplify things even after they're at its simplest. Like, we look at the atom, and you can break that down into parts, but eventually you get to a quark, and you can't break a quark down into parts. And it's the same way with this issue. We can't break it into parts. We can't say people and the environment. They're one and the same. And the political debate, I think, stems from people trying to separate them.
Interesting. Aaron, what do you think?
I think the point of the political debate does stem from trying to separate them. That's an interesting thing to think about. But I think the debate really stems from where they come into conflict. The question really that people start getting angry about is when you've got a situation between, say, a developing country that's trying to industrialize and raise levels of quality of life versus doing it a little bit more slowly and protecting the environment as they go and keeping people trapped in poverty at that point. It's when they come into conflict that the politicization occurs. Because some people feel really strongly one way, some people feel really strongly the other way. And most people are not trying to seek a balance between the two. They have to take their goal and take it all the way to the end. So industrialization and helping people raise their quality of life versus protecting the environment and ensuring that we don't run out of fossil fuels and stuff like that. So because people care so strongly and they're not willing to compromise and make progress on both sides, we don't go anywhere, politically speaking.
Yeah, and I think people have a tendency to feel threatened by it because they don't want to change their way of life. You know what I mean? And it's not easy to. And when we've built so much of our life ways, not just our personal lifestyle, but like our life ways, how we do our plumbing systems, how we do our trash systems, how we do our electricity systems, how we do so many things. And those systems have such massive infrastructure investments. It's just, it will take a massive shift for us to move away from it, or we need new systems that will essentially supersede the old systems. So if somehow, every home can begin producing all of its own energy, at the local level, and that is a cheaper device or cheaper system than we are currently using, bam, problem solved. Yeah, people at Tesla and Sun City are trying to, change that. It'll be interesting to see, and we only do have so much time left with these natural resources. You wonder, is humanity going through some sort of adolescence, like puberty, and we're going to get through this, or are we in a real crisis? And you wonder. You really, you wonder what's going on. Are all these changes, because we're going to need to see some significant changes. Promising thing is they're coming, and we're involved in them. But what we do and how we choose to live and what we favor, every day we're voting with our dollars. We're voting with our choices on the planet that we want to live in. But I do believe there are some promising. Okay, Aaron, last word, and then we'll move on.
I guess the question then is, what's the best way to move forward? What's the best way to make those decisions? Who gets to make the decisions? People, individuals, society as a whole, the government? It comes down to whose responsibility is it? And I feel like that's where a lot of this debate lies too.
Yeah. Personally, I'd argue it's everyone's and every entity's. How is the next argument, and that's a more difficult one. That really is. I'm torn on certain issues within that of how, for sure. Okay. All right, so let's shift gears here for our last 18 minutes. I want to talk about the major differences between the economic theories of Adam Smith, Karl Marx, and John Maynard Keynes. Now, the reason why I want to bring this up here is these economic theories, particularly these three, have had large effects on our planet. In the direction of our economics and really the direction of the entire modern age. Smith came along at a time period when we were sort of moving out of mercantilism, and here in the West we were moving toward a more free market system, if you will, here in the United States. But that was almost out of necessity. But we're moving away from we're beginning to move away from a mercantilist system, but we're still fairly deeply embedded into it. Anyway, make a long story short, Adam Smith comes along and he advocates for what's called the invisible hand. Many of you are familiar with this concept because of our government economics class. Who can tell me what the invisible hand is? Tanner, go ahead.
So the invisible hand is just the general fact that people tend to do what's in the best interest, and when you have competition in markets, then people are going to create good products, because if they don't, then it's not that they can stay in business, because people can just, you give them this crappy product and you're not going to refund it. Oh, all right, well, I guess I'm not going to shop here anymore. So basically the state of being of people acting in favor of the collective to benefit themselves.
Yeah, exactly. The video that we watched earlier in the semester on the pencil, and how the wood, the graphite, the rubber, the metal, all these things come together from so many parts of the globe, and are used to make that, make that product. The person who, planted, because nowadays we plant, 3 trees for every one we cut down. So they're whole corporations devoted to both, right? Planting and cutting down trees. But they are just processing wood, right? How that becomes a pencil, all the hands it has to go through, that kind of desire to develop something, create something, and sell it at a profit is guided by this so-called invisible hand, or in other words, the system tends to come together on its own. And Smith advocated for this. Where you have free market free market components, if you will, at work, they're free to go. Generally, you're going to get, over time, better products at lower prices. And yet people will make a profit and benefit from it all the way through. So that's the invisible hand. Pretty simple form of economics, but really revolutionized the world in his book, The Wealth of Nations, where he makes that argument. And because of that argument and that system, we have seen a dramatic increase in the quality of life of people all over the planet. We have also seen the effects of, that runaway desire for increases to quality of life. And we have to really consider what are going to be the drawbacks of that as well. But make no mistake about it, the world has become dramatically more wealthy, and more poverty, and less poverty, and less, so many problems in the world because of that.